Hi, and welcome to Core Review Walkthroughs. My name is Jenice and it's my pleasure to meet with you today. We were together last time and we talked about core review meetings. I hope that you've been able to hold some core review meetings or at least talk about them and discuss when you might have them. This is a follow-up to your core review meetings. The targets today are to discuss why and how walkthroughs are used. We want you to consider using walkthroughs to drive your professional learning plans. We'd like you to consider using these after you have your core review meetings to scale and implement your agreements. Today our focus is on having a particular purpose, a focus for your walkthroughs, coming out with some action plans to get results. This is your first action time. Set the timer for 60 seconds. And write down all the walkthroughs you currently do. If you have extra time, include why you do those walkthroughs. That's about 30 seconds. And about 15 more seconds. Now tuck that away for when you have your meeting time to discuss this webinar. I'd like you to revisit it and think about your purposes for the walkthroughs that you have and how these new walkthroughs might fit in with the work that you're currently doing. We often ask questions about how students learn. The question we don't often ask is, how do teachers learn? There was a great professional development report that was an accumulation of exhaustive research on professional development in 2013. And the question really is, we are comfortable with asking how students learn, what students need, what barriers do they encounter, but we often miss thinking about that through the adult lens. What our adult learners need? What gets in the way of learning? What supports learning? Today we're going to talk about moving from episodic one-shot workshops to ongoing and embedded professional learning that is collegial, that helps to support teachers and staff and administrators to have common goals and common language and a power of observation and collaboration to improve student outcomes. Why do we focus on professional learning? Why do we focus on adult professional learning? We know it's always been comfortable to focus on it from the student lens, but what we know is that together we're better. If we can create a collegial culture within a school, it requires mutual respect. It's essential to have conversations about teaching and learning, to develop shared values and vision. We need time to share, have clear expectations, teamwork, professional development, inquiry, and reflective practice. This quote is from Roland Barthes when he was talking about improving student outcomes through collegial work. This is the Oregon Response to Instruction Intervention 9 Essential Components. You can see, once again, that culture is the foundation of the components for our Oregon RTI implementation. Part of culture is a growth mindset, high expectations for all students, that culture of collaboration for all staff members. We know that these things are all part of culture, and that leads to improved student outcomes, and that's the foundation. The pillars for the house that Oregon RTI built are leadership, teaming, and database decision making, and professional learning. The last time we met, we talked about teaming and database decision making. Today, we're focused on professional learning. When we speak about professional learning, we're looking at it through the lens of observable and actionable feedback, having initial training and ongoing professional development, and including coaching and support. That can be someone that's an official coach or peer support or administrator supporting peers. It comes in many forms. Layered upon that, we have core materials and instruction, universal screening, interventions, progress monitoring, and SLD decision making. Today, we're looking at professional learning through the lens of our core materials and instruction to follow up our core review meetings. We have some new data that gives us some links to why professional learning is so important. And part of professional learning is leadership. In our project, we serve over 80 school districts across the state. When our school districts participate with our project, we ask them to complete an evaluation. The evaluation has multiple parts, one of which is a staff survey, and another one of which is an on-site evaluation. This data is from the compilation of that data. What I wanted you to take notice of is that with the graph on the left, in the area of leadership, if school districts that score over 90% in the area of leadership have higher outcomes, less students at risk, than schools that have leadership under 70%. So if you have higher leadership score in your school, student outcomes are higher. And this is using first through third grade DIBELS scores based on that Diet SB2 leadership scores. What goes into this information? We have 5 questions that get at the leadership piece. The first one is, do you have a building implementation team that meets regularly? The second question is, does the principal attend the meetings? Are they an active role? And the third one talks about principal communicating a clear vision and creating and maintaining an environment for learning for all staff and students. What we're focusing on today is number 4, principal monitor instructional practices and providing actionable feedback to staff. In this session, we're going to talk about how a principal can support that monitoring of instructional practices that have been agreed upon and including staff as a part of that. Because number 5 also talks about how the principal and leadership guides the RTI system. The other piece that we know is critical is culture. We have discovered that leadership and culture are our most indicative correlations to improving student achievement out of the 9 essential components. Schools that have higher leadership scores and higher culture scores have higher improvement in student achievement. Again, this is a comparison of schools with their DIBELS data. The graph on the left is a compilation of all the schools. If they have a school culture of over 90% score, they have 68% of students on average at benchmark. Schools that have a low culture score, under 70%, are at around 51%. Again, the questions that go into determining your culture score are, do majority of staff believe that students can learn? Does the school seek input and use teacher feedback in developing and implementing RTI systems? And what we're talking about today is there a culture of collaboration and teachers working together to improve student outcomes? Your core review walkthroughs are a tool to support that collaboration and working together to improve student outcomes. Thinking about leadership and culture, we know that professional development is important, but it has a big and. The and is ongoing coaching and support. Joyce and Showers have done some research to let us know how critical it is to not have just a one-shot workshop. Hopefully you were able to see this slide, this graphic in your pre-work. On the left, we see the components of training. You can have just presentation and lecture, presentation with some modeling. You can have a participant practice and feedback during the presentation. And the last column, the last item is not only do you have the component of training with the presentation and lecture, some modeling and practice and feedback, but ongoing coaching and admin support. We get the strongest results for seeing these actions transfer into daily practice when we have ongoing coaching and admin support. Why do we focus on professional learning? What we have a great deal of evidence on is that the one-shot workshop does not work, right? The reliance on that short-term, episodic, disconnected professional learning for teachers, those kinds of training programs are unlikely to give us positive influence on teaching and leading to student achievement. There are some caveats. To impact student performance, we know that we have evidence to indicate for this type of peer observation, collaborative work, to lead to improved student achievements, we need to have a common vision, common beliefs, a system, an infrastructure that everybody's engaged in the learning process to move forward. Your core review meetings, your core review walkthroughs, your RTI structure gives you that vision and alignment. A critical part of this next step, though, is having support. There's a nice quote from an implementer named Jeff Ronenberg. He said, leaders need to learn why we do it, and then support the person through it. He's talking about supporting his staff, all team members, through the implementation process of changing instruction and focusing on having a growth mindset and creating a learning organization. So how can we set that school culture? Can we change it? Can we set a school culture of learning? You may be familiar with Carol Dweck's work from the New Psychology of Success. She talks about and has done exhaustive research around the fixed mindset and a growth mindset. People with a fixed mindset have this pressure to look smart at all times. If you have a growth mindset, you're willing to learn at all costs. You're always looking for that next way. People with a fixed mindset have this belief that it just comes naturally to others. You'll notice your students fall into these categories. They think that people are just naturally smart. It was easy for them. And you may notice staff can feel that way at times also. But people with a growth mindset actually realize that there's a lot of hard work and that effort is key. Michael Jordan's a great example of this. Everyone thought he was just a naturally great basketball player, but there's a lot of video and statements from him about all the hard work and failure that he had prior to his success. Hard work and effort is important. People with a fixed mindset want to hide mistakes, conceal difficulties. This is really exacerbated in an environment where there isn't a safe learning environment, where it may be too risky to take a personal or professional risk, to admit defeat or to admit failure or challenges. People with a growth mindset, schools with a growth mindset, capitalize on mistakes, confront differences, look at failure as an opportunity. We all live a little bit in a fixed mindset, and we hope to increase and grow our growth mindset. One of the things that we really hope to help you focus on is thinking about, if we really want to see a change in instruction, it's imperative for us to support the implementation stage. Implementation is challenging. When we're asking for change in instruction or systems, it's critical to support the implementation stage explicitly. The largest struggle for new teachers isn't learning new approaches. We're great learners. Teaching and educators, administrators are all about learning. It's the approach to implementing them and having this time to implement. Traditional PD isn't effective because it doesn't support teachers through that stage of the steepest learning curve, implementation. It can take up to 20 times of trying to implement a new teaching strategy to begin to develop proficiency. We need to have an environment that is safe for us to risk trying new strategies. If I fail, I'm willing to come back and try it, because it's natural to try to abandon something we don't have success at. Supporting through implementation for new teaching strategies is a leading indicator for success, because our goal is to support implementation of effective instruction. We'd like to invite you to consider thinking about adult learning that is shaped and driven by data about your students, goals that educators set for themselves based on student learning needs. You do that in your core review meetings. Pick a priority skill, pick an active engagement strategy, pick an effective instructional strategy. We want to engage all adult learners at whatever stage of the career they are or level of knowledge of skills. Having a meeting structure in core review meetings, 20% meetings, and an observation structure that is formatted to meet all learners helps to create entry points for everyone. Whether I'm an experienced teacher or a new teacher, we have a common language and a common goal. Like, another critical component of adult learning is that it needs to be aligned to the goals and needs of adults to impact students. Adults need to have buy-in. Adults need to be able to practice. So aligning your learning designs to the goals and needs of adults is how we impact students. A requirement is for that growth mindset, to be in a continuous cycle of improvement as a school, having the mindset that all learners grow and the adults in the system are the lead learners. Can walkthrough tools support your adult learning? What do your tools that you currently use gather? Are the tools that you use aligned to data? What is needed as the pressing need, the priority skill for students? Are the tools aligned to the implementation initiatives that your district or school is working on? Are your tools aligned to the goals and actions that you're currently stated to be working on? If you have tools, what do you do with the information after you have them? Is there follow-up support provided? These are some questions for you to think about over the next few weeks as you think about how you might design your core review walkthroughs and if it fits with systems that you're currently using. Let's give you an example of one school's story. This is a school that's in a small rural district in the state of Oregon. They had identified an area of growth for instruction based on their core review meetings, and they set up to have core review walkthroughs. They planned ongoing and embedded support as a result of the findings in the walkthroughs. They modeled for teachers through providing videos, collaboration time, resources. Some of them watched some Anita Archer videos. Some people watched a peer do a video of the strategy. The principal expected to see these actions after this professional learning had occurred. She walked in and monitored and supported. The monitor and support was from the lens of, how's it going, what do you need? How's it going, what do you need? This was not an evaluation, it was supporting implementation. She wanted to focus on, are we getting results? So let me ask you the question. Did they get results? Let's take a look. Here's the data from that school. With a focus on MTSS and evidence-based instruction, they got great results. From 2011-2012 to 2013-14, they saw a decrease in their achievement gap for the Latino students from 48% to 69%. That is a huge growth, and they were so excited. In addition to that, their students, their white students, were already at 76% and moved up to 87%. So not only did they narrow the gap, they rose the tide. All students showed improvement. What we know is we can do this work. Here's some walkthrough logistics. They happen after core review meetings. How often do they happen? They happen at least 3 times a year, formally, and more informally. Your team will decide what is right for your school. They're focused on school level support, sometimes on grade level support, but this is not a teacher by teacher project. This is looking at what is our greatest area of need to scale the effective instructional strategies that we've decided are important. It's not an evaluation or a teacher by teacher coaching situation. Who participates? Well, it varies depending on the identified purpose and goal. Generally, it always includes the principal. Sometimes walkthroughs start with just the principal and coach and reading specialist. Superintendents will periodically attend. When walkthroughs are up and running really well, teachers are folded in and it becomes a really nice peer observation opportunity. You use a form. Each district can customize their own form. We don't encourage schools changing forms within a district because you want to have some uniformity and expectations so you can have that clarity and common goal. And walkthroughs promote student achievement. It's a collaborative effort involving educators focused on making improvements for students through adult learning. Core walkthroughs, logistics. Here's something important. Core walkthroughs are not evaluative. These are learning walkthroughs that are focused on improving instruction opportunities, asking questions, having the safe place to risk asking a peer how things are going and getting feedback. From Hattie's research, we know that feedback is valuable not only for students, but it's valuable for adults too. Core walkthroughs, logistics again, they are not for individual teachers. We're looking at school level work to scale the decisions we've made in our standards of practices. Here's some critical considerations for your core walkthroughs. Preparation is key. Make sure you have agreements on your core reading expectations. If your school or district has not completed that task, it'll need to be done prior to this activity. Make sure you have an agreement on what you mean by student engagement. You're going to be looking to see, are students engaged? Make sure we understand what engagement means and you have a common understanding. Be clear you know the purpose of the walkthrough. What are we looking for? So that takes us to the second bullet, purpose. Clarity is key. It's really helpful to limit the focus of your walkthroughs for effectiveness. Narrow what you're really looking for. Look for those items that are on your core review meeting agreements. It's tempting to look at everything, to look at small group, to look at whole group, to look at classroom organization, but really narrow in what it is that you're looking for at the time. You can only spend about 10 minutes in each classroom, so have a narrow focus. The purpose of core review walkthroughs are for growth for adults learning from each other. The purpose is to observe agreed upon scalable structures. The purpose is to create common language and common goals, and walkthroughs are results focused. So let's talk more about what this is. When we have core walkthroughs, in this lens, we're pressing into core for reading. Use your core review meeting agreements. Use your school reading expectations. You're going to have to plan for subs and arrange materials. You want to review the purpose of the core walkthroughs with all staff members that are participating. Make sure that we have agreement and clarity. Then you're going to conduct the walkthroughs. When you're walking through, it's best to not have more than 3 people in a room at a time. If you have 5 people or 6 in your group, break up and go into different rooms at different times. You don't want to overwhelm the staff or students. Find a space where you're not going to be interrupting instruction, but also walk around, talk to students, ask them what their goal is, look for instruction that you have identified as the priority and purpose. Once your walkthrough is completed, you're going to review the data collected and identify some priority needs. With that, you're going to plan school-wide level or sometimes grade level, maybe district level professional learning. You want to utilize the resources and talent so that you're not maxing out the capacity for your professional development. By going at a school level or a grade level, we can really manipulate and use the staff that we have to provide ongoing support on the identified priority need. Part of this planning is to identify needs for resources and what barriers may occur as you try to deploy your plan for your professional learning to address the needs. Lastly, make sure you have an action plan to implement once you're done after your walkthroughs. We're going to have some examples of what that might look like. Here's your core review meeting agreement support document. This is a really great document that can be completed after your core review meetings. Notice that across the top, you can list the items for each grade level, and then it's all here on this one handy sheet. You can have your previous benchmarking, current benchmarking, what the goal is. But more importantly, you can see at a glance what was the priority skill area, what are the common effective instructional strategy agreements, and the active engagement strategy agreement. It's really nice to see at a glance what our school has decided to focus on. The other column that is important to take note of is the professional development needs. You can see off to the right here that at a glance I may see some commonalities that were requested of after our core review meetings for professional development needs. Here's a sample core review support document completed. For example, in this first grade class, this group of first grade teachers decided on their priority skill area was in the area of phonics, and specifically they were going to focus on silent E and vowels in each syllable. The instruction strategy that they decided to utilize was multiple opportunities to respond, and active engagement strategy is sentence frames and individual responses. The fourth grade example is multisyllabic word decoding, corrective feedback, and choral response. You can see that this would be a nice tool to have to be able to see the agreements across if I was going to be doing a really informal walkthrough and I just wanted to see what's happening across my campus. Another nice part of this is you can quickly at a glance see that 3 out of the 6 grade levels chose core responding. Sorry, 7. So we have core response as a need and agreement. So we're going to be seeing some core response, and we can see clearly here that these teachers can support one another in implementing these strategies. Let's look at the core walkthrough form. This is a sample core walkthrough form. Quite often, schools, districts will take this form and amend it and make it fit to their needs. In this area, you would only fill out 1 or 2 agreements that you're going to be looking for. And you may not call it district non-negotiables. These may be your reading expectations. The important part is to notice the function of the form where you have the logistics at the top that are easily gathered. And then down here, you have your grade level agreements from your 100% meetings. You'll list the priority skill, the instructional strategy, and the active engagement strategy. This is page 1 of your walkthrough form. There's an area at the bottom for the observer to write comments. This is page 2 of the walkthrough form. You'll notice that it's directly taken from the core review meetings. So for example, if my second grade team had agreed to instructor provides explicit instruction, I may highlight this when I'm observing just in second grade because I know this is what I'm looking for. That's what we're talking about, narrowing your focus with your walkthrough. You're only going to be looking for the items that have been agreed upon. We're not looking at everything on these forms. This is part of page 2 in the form. Again, we had 3 grade levels that had agreed to choral responses. That's what we would be looking for. We're not going to be looking for these other items. At the bottom of the page, there's an area for comments. This is where you might record the numbers of opportunities to respond and how much time there was. You might record statements that you heard for goals stated by students. You might record any pertinent information that you want to have to jog your memory when we're going back to do review. Let's watch Mr. Tim Larkin set his staff up for using this form. They've adapted the form to meet their needs, and it has a lot more specific items on it. But Tim has paired 2 people together. He has an experienced person with a new person to the system. In this school, he wants to ensure that his walkthroughs and peer observations are supported. So Tim is going to talk about how he explains the presence and non-presence is one of the goals he's looking for in the walkthroughs.
2 steps. For today's walkthroughs, and I've got about 45 seconds on that clock before the first transition happens. Today's walkthrough, I wanted the founding RTI learners and the newfound RTI learners to see what is happening in the classrooms. Going through the walkthrough tool has a lot of knowledge behind it and learning behind it, but the walkthrough tool's main purpose is to say, is it present or absent on the front 2 pages, and then what feedback can we give to enhance it on the next 2 pages. So presence and enhancements are really the 2 forms that I want you to go through, having done the peer leader piece.
So you heard Tim describe what he's looking for is what we agreed upon present, is what we agreed upon not present. Not making an evaluatory description, just did we see it? Because it's not present at that time doesn't mean it hasn't been happening. It may be that we're not in there at the right time. So you need to decide what is it that you're looking for when you do your core review walkthroughs. Here's some success factors. Make sure that your walkthrough is based on the clear lesson architecture, that it's based on effective instruction agreements. I like to say we want some freedom within form. The form is the agreements from your core review meetings. The freedom is teachers had voice and choice in setting those agreements. Teachers selected the priority skill. Teachers select active engagement and effective instructional strategy. Some other success factors are follow-up support. It's really important if we're going to do walkthroughs to get together, talk about it, and provide some ongoing embedded support afterwards. Make sure that that support involves multiple learning channels. Make sure that that support involves teachers and leadership, and that resources are provided. Multiple learning channels mean that it might happen via a short video clip of an example of a teacher providing it. It might happen with somebody modeling that practice. I've had principals go in and model. The school that you saw earlier that had success, Melissa used to go in and actually model Elconian boxes for her staff. Sometimes staff would go and model for another staff, and sometimes it happened at stand-up meetings and after school, and in PLCs. But it involved teachers and leadership, and the resources were provided. After the walkthrough is when the big work starts. If we're to help all students learn, it's going to take that collective effort to meet the needs of our students. After the walkthrough, you need to have scheduled at least an hour to an hour and a half to meet as a team. You're going to need to choose a facilitator, and the facilitator is going to lead your team through the debrief process. At this time, you're going to commit to an action plan prior to ending the meeting. Let's look at what this might look like. Here we're going to see Tim Larkin and the 2 teachers that went on the walkthrough. They're sitting after the walkthrough, going through their walkthrough forms. I have facilitated this meeting and asked them to look through their forms with the lens of what is it they see that were glows? What were the good things they saw? What stood out to them as a great aha? So you'll notice each one of them is taking notes on just a little slip of paper, and the facilitator is getting ready to record that information for them. You can see here one of those notes. After looking through all of the forms for glows, these are some things that stood out. There were 11 opportunities to respond in 30 seconds. The instructor provided explicit feedback after initial responses, and they hit all the bullets from that box. You can see that right here, it's marked. The goal was stated and students repeated the goal back, and they set expectations for small group time, and there was energetic pacing. This is an example of looking through all the walkthrough forms, finding those glows. Let's talk about what this really looks like in the next step. There are going to be facilitator actions and colleague actions. The facilitator's going to be leading the debrief of the meeting. So step one is for the facilitator to ask the team to review all of the forms with the lens of glows. What strengths did you notice? We just looked at the team doing that. The colleague needs to silently review the forms and list the glows. Once, as a facilitator, once you notice your team has stopped or slowed down listing, ask each team member to share one item from their list in a whip around fashion. What we mean by that is have one person at a time state what they have on their list. It's important to do it in this manner because if I just have Karen list all of hers, we may not be able to hear from Tim or Emily because they'll say, oh, I had that too. As we go with one and then go around the room, it may be that others will just check off because they had that also, but then we hear from everyone in the room and honor each person. The facilitator needs to record the information in the walkthrough action planning form under the glows column. I'm going to show you that form in a moment. The next thing that we're going to do is once they've exhausted their list, it's time for the facilitator to press in and add any items that you noticed that were not captured. You may be able to summarize quickly anything that might have been missed. So the next step we have, step 4, is to really repeat step 2 with areas for growth. So now the team is going to look through those same forms, but their lens is going to be, where are the areas that I was looking for growth? What are those things where we have opportunities to improve? Once the team has looked through that and they've created their bulleted list, you're going to once again do the whip around and record in a list under the area of grows the statements from the team. Once you've completed that step, it's nice to take a break from that process and really think through the lens of celebrations. Ask your team what celebrations you have from the balance of the year. This team in particular, they've been doing this work for 3 years, and they had a lot of celebrations about growth in collaboration and teaming and in implementation of their curriculum and effective instructional strategies. We often miss celebrations in education, and it's important to do it and embed it in practices. Once you've listed those celebrations, it's time to go back to that area of growth. Review the area of growth as a team and prioritize 1 or 2 that are school-based and actionable. Now it's time to lead the team to discuss and commit to an action plan to record on the form. If you've found a couple of priority areas, think about which one you can commit to, what resources are needed. Once you've decided that, record it on the form and commit to a timeline for implementation. Let's take a look at what this form might look like. Here's a sample form. 9 classrooms were walked through. You can see on the left side are the glows, on the right side are the grows. In the area of grows, we highlighted the ones that were yellow if it was just one teacher specific, and the principal's going to address that independently offline. You can see that the areas that came out as high priority popped up quite often were highlighted in red. The next part was to create action steps. This team decided that they needed to define and aspire what they aspire to for independent work. They have a plan to use a tool called the 8 T's of independent instruction, to use that as a launching pad for independent work. They're going to develop rigorous and relevant understanding of independent work expectations, define active engagement, and create a timeline for implementation. They've listed what resources are needed, and below you see some of their celebrations. Looking through the planning template, you can see that it's easy to use. This school team has been using the template and making plans and including peers in their observation form for a while. Let's listen to Emily tell us about how that has evolved and how their teachers are feeling.
Mentor teacher at Gaston Elementary. It has been a joy to watch observations grow and develop in our building. Now peers are observing each other during our observations of core reading instruction, and teachers are getting information to give to each other based upon learning they're seeing in their peers' classroom, but they're also getting takeaways to bring back to their own rooms. So not only are they able to gather information on the walkthrough tool for their peer, but they're also able to say, oh my gosh, that was absolutely incredible, and I can implement that in my room, and it develops these peer-to-peer deep conversations about learning and engagement, and it's taken us to a whole new level professionally.
It's just great to hear that this process has taken them to a whole new level professionally. I've had the privilege of being in this building for a few years now, and they really have grown in the peer collaboration to really go deep, to support one another, and to have lots of opportunities to look at and review instruction and make improvements.
Mentor teacher again.
What resonates with you? Would you use these tools? Do you have other tools that would work that are data-driven? Let's think about where and when could the learning occur after the meetings, once we've discovered and made those commitments, like they did to independent work group. You have that school-wide data. They created a plan to address the big picture high leverage areas. So some opportunities to share that might be in staff meetings, through coaching, through PD time, through professional learning teams, peer observation. Do you have other ideas? The goal is to target those high need areas for grade levels, not individual teachers. You're going to fluctuate resources and talent to maximize time and capacity. Make sure to check what resources you have. Was there a training that happened in the past and you could pull up and give to someone? Maybe they missed that. Is there an upcoming training or materials or something that will address the issue? Communicate with other schools in the district so you can leverage your resources. Other schools' grade levels may have the same need that you do, and it's nice to maximize the capacity and resources. What we know is that real change is hard, and asking for instructional change takes time, and it needs to be supported. There's always an implementation dip with any implementation of an initiative. What we want to do is minimize that implementation dip. If we build a bridge, if we plan supports, we can lessen the time of that implementation dip. You're important. You're a critical part of this work, and it cannot be done without you. You are the heroes, and we invite you to participate in these walkthroughs and hope that you find them meaningful. It's time to put a plan of action together. You have some time to work together to think about how this might work for your school. Thank you.